Hi, my name is Amy and I'm here to answer your questions about river cruising. Now, I pulled a whole bunch of people to ask what are your most common questions about doing a river cruise if you've never done one. And one of the big ones that I got asked is about motion sickness. Now, I know a lot about motion sickness. I've struggled with it my whole life. I still do, and it was one of the first things that I looked up when I was considering doing my very first river cruise as well. So I'm here to answer your questions and explain that it's not necessarily as simple an answer as you might think as to whether or not you get motion sick. Now, as you can see, I'm traveling through France right now. The boat is moving. The boat itself is actually super smooth. It goes 10 to 15 miles an hour most of the time, and it feels like butter. I mean, it really could not be smoother. Most of the time, the boat will start going, and you won't even know that you're moving. That's how smooth it is. Way smoother than an ocean cruise, a train, a car, anything like that. So from the perspective of the ship itself, you don't need to worry about the movement. Now, there are small things that make a difference. I always recommend, like I did, staying on the top floor of the ship, usually the third floor, because you are removed, you're higher up from the water. If you're on the first floor, or even the second, you're closer to the water level, and so the water is rushing by. And in some cases, seeing the water rushing by can cause a bit of dizziness and a bit of motion sickness. So if you are someone who's sensitive to movement, I would suggest getting a third floor room, or just getting as high as you can from the water. The other big piece that I did not think of on my first one and wish someone had told me is that the thing you actually have to worry about the most with the river cruising and motion sickness are the bus tours. Now, I didn't realize that this is so common with river cruising, that there's actually a lot of excursions that require busing to get to them. I'm on Alma Waterways right now, and they do this really great thing. I've got mine printed out because I do this every time now, where they send you your e-documents about 30 days before cruising. And you'll notice as you go through that it gives you a description of the excursion itself. It tells you if it's a hike or a walk. It'll tell you how far you're going to hike or walk, but it also tells you, and I've got it circled here, how long of a bus ride there is. I didn't realize this on my first one and got stuck on an hour bus ride that made me very nauseous. Ever since then, I've paid a lot of attention to the busing. There's a ton of options that don't require busing pretty much every day. There's excursions, actually definitely every day, there's excursions that don't require busing. Also, a lot of times you're parked in town, so even if the excursion is a bus excursion, you can just walk in town and do something on your own or meet them in town. The ones you have to look out for are the ones that the excursions they call city tours. Usually a city tour is a bus tour where they're going to bus you all the way around the city to show you everything, and then they'll bring you to a church or a Christmas market or whatever it is. So I avoid the city tours now. I do walking tours, hiking tours, bike tours, but I avoid the city tours that require a lot of busing. The other thing to pay attention to is that in the bus ride estimates that they give you, that is round trip. So if it says like this one, an hour and 15 minutes, that means all the way there, all the way back. And they pad it a little bit. So an hour and 15 minutes really means about 30 minutes out, 30 minutes back. So it's really up to you to decide what you can handle from a bus perspective, but it's something to keep in mind and do your homework ahead of time to find out if there's busing and how long the bus ride is, and kind of gauge from your own experience whether or not that's going to be an issue, or if you need to bring Dramamine or something. The other thing is, when you pick your itinerary that you're doing, you might ask your travel agent which itineraries you're parked in towns the most rather than parked out of town. Like ocean cruises, this is a huge issue. You'll get parked sometimes hours from where you're actually going, and so you end up busing a lot more. Whereas river cruises, you're parked really in town most of the time, but I usually will check the itineraries and make sure that where I'm parked most of the time is right in town. So even if I'm not interested in the excursions or don't want to bus, I can just walk right off the boat. So it's another thing to consider. The only other thing that I'll mention, because I have a relative who is claustrophobic, is that with river cruises, you also have locks to consider. If you've ever heard of locks or maybe haven't seen one before, you can check out my Instagram and TikTok. I have a video of what it's like to go through a lock, but you go through quite a few of them usually on river cruises, and you kind of drive into this cement box, for lack of a better word, that fills with water so that you can keep going down the river. It just lifts you up and keeps you going. It's very smooth, it's not a big deal, but if you're claustrophobic, it can feel like a big deal. So that's another thing to consider if you have someone who's sensitive to claustrophobia. Okay? All right, let me know if you have any other questions about motion sickness, claustrophobia, anything like that. Anxiety with traveling. River cruises are a great option if you get travel anxiety or don't want to be in the middle of the ocean. Just post a question in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, okay? All right, thanks guys.